What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Daniel Starkand as we continue our free agency primer video series, breaking down the 5 biggest free agents who are from the Dodgers last season. And today, we are talking about Kenley Jansen. Just turned 34 years old, obviously a Dodger legend, one of the more complicated, I would say, guys when it comes to free agency. He spent his entire career with the Dodgers. He's coming off the best season of his career, you could argue. His best ERA since 2017, a 2.22 ERA, 69 appearances. The strikeout rate was down, but the walk rate was the best it's been. We've seen him redefine himself. He's no longer just cutter. He does have a breaking ball, has some other fastballs. So what do you make of Kenley Jansen as he enters into age 34 season and entering free agency?
It's funny because if you would have asked me this like 5-6 months ago, I think both of us would have had completely different answer. Although I will give you some credit.
Yeah.
You predicted before this past season the Kenley
We don't have
Jansen
to talk about any
resurgence
of my other predictions, but that one we could talk a ton about.
For sure. But hey, Kenley's coming off a great year. There's no denying his past the last few years. Like, we're not at an elite level the way he previously was, but he seemed to kind of get back to that level this season. I don't know. You say he's 34. Like, I don't know how many more years going forward he's going to be able to pitch at that level. But if anything, he proved that he could adapt. Like you said, he started throwing his breaking ball more. He started throwing his two-seamer more. He's not as reliant on his cutter. He seemed to make some mechanical changes, which would say, he figures some things out, is going to continue to be good moving forward. It's to me, it's just going to come down to like how do the Dodgers feel about the current guys that are in their bullpen? And if it's up to me, I'd say they should feel pretty good about the guys they do have. They got Blake Trinan, of course. Brusdar Graterol really came on in the postseason. Phil Bickford and Alex Vesia had great years kind of late in the season. Guys like Evan Phillips and Justin Brule, came on and were really good. And it's not just necessarily about those guys, but to me, it's just about that the Dodgers could find really good relievers basically out of nowhere for no one, for no money. So with that being said, do you want to pay Kenley Jansen what it's going to take to re-sign him? It's probably going to take at least $15 million a year, I'd say, like coming off the season he had, given his reputation. I don't know how many years that would be, maybe 2 or 3 years. To me, that's probably a little bit much. I think you could go out and get other relievers for cheaper, and they could be maybe not as productive, but pretty close, and you could kind of have more depth as opposed to the high-end talent. With that being said, though, I wouldn't be surprised, and we've kind of disagreed on this, I'd say. Like, I think Kenley Jansen loves being a Dodger. I know the fans booed him this past year, and I'm sure he didn't like that. I don't know anyone that would like that. So I don't know how he feels about the fans, but I'd say, like, as far as the organization and living in LA, I know he loves all that stuff. It's the only organization he's ever known. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him maybe take a little bit less to come back to the Dodgers, go for another ring. I know winning is very important to him, and I don't know where else you could go that you're going to have as good of an opportunity as with the Dodgers. Like, yes, there's other good teams out there, but if we're betting right now who's going to have the best team in 2022, I feel like most people would pick the Dodgers. So they give him a chance to win. He loves the city, so it wouldn't surprise me to see him take a little less, but I still don't even know if he's going to get offered like a little less than market value from the Dodgers. They have Blake Trinan, who could step in right away as closer. They didn't pick up Joe Kelly's option, which was was for $12 million, but they paid him a $4 million buyout. So if they weren't even willing to pay Joe Kelly an extra $8 million, I don't know if they're going to be willing to give Kenley Jansen $15 million a year for 2 or 3 years. And there's also reports out there that they're looking to bring back Kelly at a lower price. So I think they'll probably give out like a lowball type offer for Kenley. And I don't know if it'll be, I might be too low even for him to accept, even if I think he'd be willing to take a discount.
I want you to buckle up for this one. Jim Bowden's got a contract prediction for his number 15 free agent, which is Kenley Jansen. 2 years, $40 million is what he thinks Kenley Jansen gets on the open market. That would be shocking.
Then he will not be a Dodger.
Liam Hendriks signed for $354. He was 3 years younger, 31 years old at the time. Kimbrel, as a 31-year-old, got 3 for $43 back in 2019. So I find it hard to believe that he is going to get a higher average annual value than Liam Hendriks did a year ago.
I agree.
But, to Bowden's credit, he points out Kenley Jansen threw 69 innings this year and allowed 36 base hits. 36 base hits all season is what he allowed. Yes, we know
Really
that it was
good.
exciting, more exciting, and exciting might not be the right word, but it was eventful when Kenley Jansen was in games. But he was really, really good. As I said, the best ERA that he had since 2017. There is another closer, Raisel Iglesias from the Angels, who's younger than Jansen. Many people have him higher on lists, but fascinating. But I'm with you. I think the Dodgers have multiple categories. There are positions that are need tos, and there are positions that are want tos. And I think relief pitching is a want to. I think the Dodgers need to do something with the starting staff. They just signed Andrew Heaney.
Yeah.
That gives them 3 starting pitchers. They need at least 5. Tony Gonsolin, if you want to include him, that's 4. They need starting pitching. That is a need, and it needs to be somebody good. The bullpen, you just pointed out.
Definitely.
I think Joe Kelly coming back makes some sense. I read someone say that part of the reason they may have bought him out is because that buyout would then be transferred to previous years. That would not be $4 million against the luxury tax this season, but that was already kind of dealt with over past years. So even if they were to sign him to an $8 million contract, it would only count $8 million against the cap rather than possibly $12 million against the cap this year. I could be wrong on that, but that made some sense to me. But yeah, I'm with you. I think relief pitching is a position group that the Dodgers have identified as we can patch this one together. And they do have young arms coming up. And you could, as good as Jansen was, Treinen, you could argue was better. I believe his ERA was better than Jansen's was. And so if you can bring back somebody who's not necessarily Jansen's level, but if they bring back Joe Kelly and that was all they did in the bullpen, I would feel pretty good about Treinen and Kelly and Bickford and Vesia and Gratterall as kind of the 5, and then you've got Phillips and Brule, and then you just say, hey, the Dodgers are probably going to find 3 other people. Maybe Haney's making some appearances out of the bullpen.
Tommy Kenley coming back, Caleb Ferguson coming back. So
it's great. And one of these videos coming up, we're going to talk about, does Jimmy Nelson come back? Does Danny Duffy come back in a relief role? So Corey Knebel's another guy that's a free agent that could be back. And so, definitely interesting. Yeah. So let's end it with this. Prediction time. Is Kenley Jansen a Dodger in 2022?
I'll say no, just because I think he's going to get, I don't know, about 2 years, $40 million. That seems a bit steep, but maybe 2 or 3 years at like 16 to 18 million AAV. And I just don't think the Dodgers would be willing to meet that price. Like, I think maybe the Dodgers would go to like 3 years at like 12 million a year or something. But I just think that's kind of a little bit too insulting for him to accept. And I just think like, the reason I don't think they're willing to overpay for Jansen is not only because, they're pretty set in the bullpen, as we've talked about, but I also just think the sentimental stuff isn't necessarily there with Kenley as much as it is for Kershaw. Like, we have another video coming out on Kershaw where we just think he means too much to the organization for them to let him go. And I don't know if that's how it's going to play out. We'll see. But like let's say it comes in tomorrow that the Dodgers re-sign Kershaw and the money's a little more than everyone was expecting. Like, I don't think anyone's going to complain about that. Like, everyone's going to be like, oh yeah, it's Kershaw. Like, that's totally fine. You can't let that guy walk. Whereas with Kenley, if it comes out tomorrow, he re-signed with the Dodgers for 2 years, $40 million, I think everyone would kind of go crazy and be like, why are they giving that much money? Like, the sentimental stuff just isn't there as much with Kenley as it is with Kershaw. So I don't think they're really prioritizing
and I just think
him
like
as
Kenley's
much.
relationship with Dodger fans has been more complicated. There have been those moments where it's like, he's pissed at Dave Roberts and he's staring into the dugout because he had gotten taken out of the closer's role and he gets booed by fans and stuff. And so it's nothing against Kenley. By all accounts, this is a guy who loves being a Dodger. He's been a Dodger. Scott Van Slyke pointed this out. Like, he's been a Dodger since he was like 16, so like he has been a Dodger for yeah, exactly. So his whole life is Dodger blue. And so I do think there's some of that with him, but I agree. I just think a closer is not going to resonate with a fan base in quite the same way because a closer is going to have ups and downs. They're going to have those moments where they're not as good. A year ago, again, if we had this conversation, people were pissed that he was taking up $20 million of the luxury tax. He was worth every dollar of it this past season. Whether or not that continues to be the case, I think it will. I think the fact that he has multiple pitches, Joe Kelly taught him the breaking ball, I think that's going to help prolong his career. I just don't think the Dodgers are in a position with all the other needs and all the other guys, Seager and Scherzer, to say, you know what, yes, we're going to give $18 million a year to a closer rather than saving some of that money to go get a starting pitcher or to go get a bat in the middle of the lineup. So I'm with you. I'm predicting no for Kenley Jansen. And that's just the nature of 5 guys due up all at the same time and a lot of needs on this Dodger roster. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Would you sign Kenley Jansen? If it was a 3-year, $50 million contract. Are you interested in Kenley Jansen at that number? Let us know below. That's Daniel Starkand. My name's Jeff Spiegel. As always, check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958, everywhere on social media, including right here on YouTube. Ring the notification bell, click subscribe. We much appreciate it. Again, that's Daniel. My name's Jeff. We'll see you next time.
The best team holding a trophy high in the air. The Los Angeles Dodgers, champions of the baseball world.